So that's, like I mentioned earlier today, that's the theme of the month, love and hospitality. And this one person, but they said this, that hospitality is simply love on the loose. Love on the loose. And I do believe that hospitality is a way we can express our love in such a practical way. And I was trying to think, are there any people based on their worldview, their paradigm, their belief system that think hospitality is a bad thing? Maybe there is. Nothing really came to my mind that this culture or this group of people or this religion or this ideology, like hospitality is a bad thing. I think people in general have a sense of hospitality. If you're hospitable, that's a good thing. That's a noble thing to do, to be hospitable. And I think it is a simple way to think of, like, how can I love people, share what I've been given, right? Just by being hospitable. It's such a practical way to do that. So hopefully today we can be continually inspired what it means to be hospitable and to love people. So in Hebrews, you can turn there. We'll read this short verse in Hebrews chapter 13. So if you remember, the context of the book of Hebrews is written to a Jewish audience, and the writer is extremely well versed in the Jewish literature, and he's basically reminding them to not revert back to Judaism. That's kind of the context of the book. And then towards the end of the book, the writer is basically giving them some practical instructions. And then this is one of the practical instructions that he gives the audience of this letter. And he says, keep on loving one another as brothers and sisters. And we talk about that all year, pretty much. We talk about loving God with our heart, with our mind, with our soul, with our strength, and how we love one another and we love our neighbor, right? And that includes, of course, the people that God has put in our fellowship, our brothers and sisters. Then he says in verse 2, do not forget to show hospitality to strangers, for by so doing, some people have shown hospitality to angels without knowing it. I don't know exactly what that means, but there are examples in the scriptures where that did happen in the Old Testament. And you can go back and look for it if you don't know what I'm referring to. You can make that little scavenger hunt. Where in the Old Testament did people meet someone and they show hospitality and it was actually an angel? And God is watching, and of course God is pleased. But this word here, philoxenia, which is the Greek for hospitality, when we read hospitality, maybe we think of, I don't know, like what do you think of hospitality? When we think of hospitality in our Western 21st century culture, what does that mean? Just some examples. Having people over for dinner, okay. So having people over in your house, dinner, sure. What else? Hotel, sure. Hospitality management. When I typed in Google, I forget exactly, but I typed, are people in New England hospitable? And it was all about hospitality management. That came up in Google. So AI thinks hospitality means hospitality management. All right, anything else you think of hospitality in our Western culture? Maybe that's the main thing. I don't know. Having people over for dinner, like that's kind of hospitable. Taking them out for coffee. I don't know. In the Greek culture, this was deeply embedded in the culture. Like this word philoxenia. When we hear hospitality, maybe we think of dinners, hospitality management. But it was an unwritten rule that if someone comes to your village, you need to show hospitality. If there was a new person in your village, even if it was like a foreign resident, it was not uncommon for people to go to their house with olive oil, tomatoes, and I forget what else they brought, but they would bring that to them. Like, welcome to our village. If someone came to your house, you showed them hospitality. You fed them, you housed them. It was like an unwritten rule to be done. And even in Greek mythology, the god Zeus, okay, I know this. He was called Zeus Xenios. He was a protector of travelers. So for the Greeks, in their culture, they were taught foreigners, travelers, you show them hospitality. You take them in. You feed them. You bring stuff to them. So he's saying, do not forget this hospitality. And they can understand more of this concept than we do, like how embedded, how vast that was in their culture. But that's what he's saying to them to encourage them to do. And I think, for us, I don't know when you think of hospitality, but I think if when we give hospitality to people that we know, family, friends, but even strangers, I think we're benefiting from it. And sometimes we're the ones benefiting the most. I think when you show hospitality, like you're actually being able to benefit from what God has designed into a relationship and loving people, being the one that takes the initiative, being the one that's serving other people. And if you're not doing it, if you're not being hospitable, whatever that kind of means in our context, you are missing out on one of the gifts that God has given us to have this life to abundance, this life to amazingness. We've talked a lot about love this whole year. And the more I study love, the longer I'm married, the more I realize that was not meant to be like evil laughter kind of came out like that, but it was more like humbly understanding, really, like understanding how important love is. And even last week, my wife taught me about emotional intelligence, which she does quite often. But I'm learning as a married husband that love is so profound and is so needed. And if the world just got this thing correct, doesn't matter political ideology, doesn't matter the infrastructure, it's not primary, it's secondary. If they figure this thing out, which you can be your own judge, the Bible says there will always be times where people will be lovers of themselves, lovers of money. That's what it says in 1 Timothy. But we believe that as long as we have breath, like we want to be an example of this. Love. It exemplifies that love to people because this is what the world needs. So we are designed for love. There's a scientist, his name is Dr. Jerome Stoll. He was a nuclear scientist. He was also atheist. He kind of described himself as a cynical atheist. So he had nothing to do with God, religion, organized religion, church, that kind of stuff. And in his research, what he did was they would measure electrical output of the brain and the heart. That was kind of like his main research. He was also doing stuff on nuclear fusion. And then one time, a director or a supervisor asked him to pull him into different type of research. And this research was examining the brain frequencies of people that are about to die. So they know they have some disease and they're about to die, and they're measuring these people, what happens in the brain, and also in the heart, what goes on when they're dying. So he's with these researchers, he's kind of disgruntled, like, I don't want to do this stuff, I want to do my nuclear fusion things. And then there was two people that was in a study group. This one person was really disgruntled and angry at life and bitter. And the measuring device to use went from -500, which was, if you do your own Google search, you can see there's different brave lengths. And the more you are towards the negative part, the more unhealthy it is for your brain, for your neurophysiology. 0 was kind of the neutral, and then 500 was the highest they can go, the most positive. This other person that they were studying, she was a woman. I think I remember she had cancer. I can't remember, it was like a brain tumor. So she's in her little room. They're behind this glass wall, and they're watching this woman, and she's close to death. And she's praying to God. She's praising God. And the scientist, as he retells the story, they kind of forgot that there were scientists, and they're kind of being mesmerized by this woman. She doesn't know that she's being observed, and she's just praising God. And they're just kind of like almost like in a little trance, just watching this woman praising God as she's sick and about to die. And then he forgets, I got to look at my measurement. And the needle was like bucking up against 500. He wanted to go past 500, but he couldn't. And that was the pivotal moment for him when he became a believer in God. And a ton of other research on what happens when people meditate in the love of God, what happens when you meditate on love. And there's a fairly new study called neurotheology that studied this. But this idea that we're designed for love. And I think hospitality is a way that we can make that connection, like in a very practical way. And you don't have to say something to people. You can just be hospitable. And they're like, whoa. They can feel that love in such a deep, deep, profound way. And I think, that there should be, in theory, a correlation between love, religious faith, and hospitality. So if you have religious faith, like if you're a Christian, right, there should be some correlation between your faith and what you do on a day-to-day basis. Okay, so the potential bad news for us in New England, in New Hampshire, is that the religious faith here is low. We're ranked 50th, all right, in the United States in terms of people have faith. And this is from the Pew Research Center, which I used a ton when I was a teacher. So it's a very reliable, viable research. But basically, if that is true in terms of people that are Christians, right, it's a bedrock of their faith, of their conviction, of their core belief system that they're going to love, right? So if this is true, then in theory, it's just a theory. So if you're from New England, like, don't you dare say about New Englanders, okay? We are very hospitable. I'm not saying you're not. I'm just saying, just based on this theory, okay? This proposition, okay? We're kind of starting on the, it might be a little challenging. Also, there's like a loneliness epidemic. This is from Barna. And what it says is nearly 1 in 5 U.S. adults who have been to church recently or ever say they don't have any real community in their lives. And then also the second point that says it is also important to note that 1 in 5 U.S. adults who've never been to church or haven't been in at least 6 months say they have no community at all. That's what the research shows. So that means that, what is that, 20%, 1 out of 5? Is that correct? Yes. Thank you, Steve. I just want to make confirmation. All right. 20% of people, roughly speaking, right, have no community whatsoever. Like nobody. I know for Christmas we do sing carols at the elderly home, and a lot of them are very, very lonely, especially as they get older. And hospitality, I think, is a way to break that loneliness cycle. And of course, they also talk about this, that if you have low social connections, just basically what it says, not good for your health. You might as well be smoking, 15 cigarettes daily, right? And have friends than being lonely. Okay, it is not healthy for. I remember shared that study, the Harvard study of adult development, shared that some months ago, and they same thing. Conclusion after 7 decades of research. Number 1 that's important for health, longevity, age of 80, is your relationship at the age of 50. That's kind of the conclusion from that study. So relationship is extremely important. We are super fortunate to have a community like this that care about each other, and of course we can share with other people in so many ways, but obviously through hospitality. So, sorry, this next slide is kind of small, but I want you let's just take a step back. So we talk about hospitality, we talk about love, and in New England, of course, there are many people that don't have religious faith. They're skeptics, and they have a hard time maybe understanding Christianity or maybe understanding God. They have a skewed image of God. I think Aaron mentioned the chosen, right? I think most people, if you ask them, I've done this, you may have done it, when you talk about Jesus, they're like, yeah, I like Jesus. I'll go surf with Jesus. Like, he's cool. I like Jesus. The church, nah. God, probably not. A lot of people have a hard time with conceptualizing God and the church as opposing, but Jesus, they do. So let's take a look at the scripture in Exodus as you talk about love and how this shows God's love, because that's obviously what we want to share. And like I said, it can be a practical way through hospitality. So in Exodus 34, if you remember the story, the people have left Egypt. All right, they're in the desert, they're walking, and Moses goes up on the Mount Sinai. He gets his 10 Commandments. He stays for a while, and the people are, where is this guy? We're waiting for a long time, and they make this golden calf. Moses comes back down, and he's furious because it didn't take long for them to kind of rebel against God. And Moses needs assurance from God. Hey, I want to make sure you're still with us. And he's wrestling, and God is about to do something towards the people. Moses prays to the people, intercedes to the people. And then God comes back down again to Moses, and he kind of explains who he is. And this is what God says about himself. He says, then the Lord came down in the cloud and stood there with him and proclaimed his name, the Lord. And he passed in front of Moses, proclaiming, the Lord, the compassionate and gracious God, slow to anger, abounding in love and faithfulness, maintaining love to thousands, and forgiving wickedness, rebellion, and sin. Yet he does not leave the guilty unpunished. He punishes the children and their children for the sin of the parents to the third and the fourth generation. So here we have God, Yahweh, the Almighty One, explaining to Moses who he is, kind of describing himself to Moses. And I think if we want to be hospitable, we want to be loving, it's going to be affect our view of God and how we feel about God, how we think about God. Like that affects our behavior, our habits, and what we do. So here God again is describing who he is. And in Hebrew, which is this was the Hebrew context, a name meant a lot. It wasn't just, let's just name him Brian because, Brian rhymes with Ryan. And she wants Ryan, I want Brian. Like, I don't know if Brian means anything. Does he know what it means, Brian? Brian? Oh, I think I heard like a warrior last time I checked. I think it was like a warrior. But a name could mean a lot. So here it says, the Lord came in verse 6. The Lord, the compassionate and gracious God. It's 3 times. In Hebrew, the number 3 means like this idea of completeness. Like it's a divine wholeness. So God is not he's divine, he's whole, he's complete, he's perfect. So that's why it's 3 times. I may have shared this before, but my dad is Yoruba, so that's one of the 4 ethnic tribes in Nigeria. And the Yoruba culture, they also have the culture of when you name a child, it's based on the context of where you are in life. So my first full name is Bamidala, and it means follow me home or follow me and reach home. That's what that means. And I was thinking my older brother, his name is Umutui, equally easy. And it means child of wealth. And I'm working through like my healing, like, why can't I be the child of wealth? Because to be predestined to be wealthy. I thought it'd be pretty cool, but I don't have it. So pray for me as I'm working through that. My sister, her name is Sade. If you know the singer, it's actually short for Fola Sade in Nigerian or Yoruba. It means honor confers a crown. It signifies respect and dignity. I'm like, okay. But anyways, I'm praying through my name, okay? Let's go home, There you go. I'm just joking. I like my name. So anyways, we have Hebrew. 3, and the word of God in Hebrew, it has a meaning. Then he goes through and he says he's compassionate, which is this word that's used about 13 times. What I thought was interesting is in the New Testament, I think this is correct. The verb that's used to describe Jesus the most when he interacts with people is what? Compassion. Maybe it's an adjective. I forget my grammar. But when it describes Jesus, he had compassion on people. He's compassionate on them. In Greek, it's this thing like it's like about it's down in the bowels. Like when you feel it down here, like you have to do something. It's like that thing. That's the first word of God too. Like he's compassionate. But I think it's so profound because you think sometimes like if people do something like, but if you have compassion, like you totally flip how you view them. Like you're able to see them with love. That's God. He's compassionate. He's gracious. He gives us things that we do not deserve. Over and over and over and over again. This next one, it says he's slow to anger. And I thought about, especially for people that are skeptics, because they view God in the Old Testament as angry, right? He's an angry God. He's kind of vengeful. He's jealous, and he's not like Jesus. And I thought about that and so many other people, but this idea of he's slow to anger. Anger is not bad. Every time about love, and people say, well, love and opposite of love is what?
Hate.
Not caring. Why is the opposite of love not hate? There's emotions. You care. So when you hate someone, or when people do that, there is a connection. When the connection is completely severed, it's apathy, indifference. You watch someone, there's no feeling, there's no emotion. That's the opposite of hate, and that's super dangerous. But hate, not a good thing. But it means like there's emotions there. There's emotional connection. So God cares deeply. More than I know I can understand. That's why he gets angry, because he cares. We all understand this. For those of you who have kids, or if you have a spouse, or if you have someone you care about, sometimes you're like, what in the world? Like, you know, what are you doing? Like, you get very upset. You get very angry. And the stronger the connection, the more upset you get, the more you feel. Maybe like with your spouse, right? Because you love them so deeply. So there's anger. God has anger, but he's slow to anger. Then he goes on to say, abounding in love and faithfulness. God is loving. He's abounding. And then it says abounding in love and faithfulness. In Hebrew, there's more like one word, but it's really hard to translate into English. And if it can mean different things, such as goodness, kindness, faithfulness. Most often, the best, what kind of these scholars that study linguistics, I think, they say it's a steadfast love. It's a steadfast love, which I think is really cool because he's with you. Like he's not going to give up on this relationship. Like it's this Greek, this Hebrew word, and it's used 250 times in the Old Testament. But they say abounding in love. He's abounding. They're trying to figure out how do you bring this word to light. And I think of like a mother who loves their child. It's just, they'll do anything, right? So will the dad, but he tends to sleep through the night when the baby's crying, right? There's the mom that gets up, right? But that love, like just steadfast, that will do anything for their child. He's also forgiving. We just took communion. We reminded over again that he forgives. He forgives. And then this last sentence is also kind of tricky. Yet he does not leave the guilty unpunished, but he punished children and their children for the sin of the parents to the third and the fourth generation. People are like, see, right there. What this means is not that if your parent embezzled finances, well, you're going to get punished by being poor. That's not what it means. What it means is, if your parents had what the Bible means as uses sin, which is like, here's the mark that God gave to people to have a functional society, have functional relationships, meaning such that you have to forgive. If you don't forgive, he's going to eat you up in the inside, and you can't have reconciliation. That's one of the principles God says. If you don't forgive, you sin, you're going to have dysfunction. And over time, it's going to mess with your character being. And your kids are going to observe that through your actions, through your words, through your deeds, through your marriage, or what's the opposite of marriage? Divorce. And they're going to be affected by that. And if they're not healed, they're going to pass it on again. It's just this dysfunction that's passed on. And today we say dysfunction, the Bible says sin. It is passed on because that cycle is not broken. That's what that means. It doesn't mean that God keeps you responsible for the parents' decisions and actions. But you are affected by it. That's why we have Jesus. We want to break that pattern. And one way we can do that is simply by being hospitable. Because people have maybe never experienced a stranger being hospitable. But they see love in action like, well, this is different. And they're not trying to sell me something. I met people like so friendly. I'm not against these pyramid schemes, but I met people that are part of Amway and they're like so friendly. And then after a while, I realized that they have an agenda. They may be sincere trying to help me become a millionaire, because that's people have approached me, or they may just have, maybe that's, I don't know. But there's very few times I met someone who don't know me, have nothing to kind of gain, and they're being hospitable. They initiate with me unless there's an agenda. Do we have an agenda as Christians? What's our agenda? Get to heaven, make disciples, be like Jesus. Isn't our agenda to show them what we found? If they want it. Like if they don't want it, it's totally, they have free choice. They can do whatever they want to do. Everybody can do whatever they want to do. But our agenda is like, I found something I think it's amazing. I want to share with you if you want it. If you don't want it, we shouldn't. Jesus didn't push it on people. Right? He just walked to the next person. You dust the sand off your shoes and you move on, right? But he loved them. But yes, we have an agenda in a sense, right? Like we want to share what we've been given. But of course, it's something that is so amazing and so wonderful. And free. Thank you. Don't have to sell it. We can't even sell it. Like, it's not ours, right? It's not ours. So again, this idea of hospitality, it is an expression of love, and I believe that we are benefactors of it when we do it. Let me see. I'm gonna go. So yesterday, we'll do this one first. A few brave souls decided to hike up the tallest mountain on the East Coast, called Mount Washington. Okay, the youngest person was Tommy. He showed up in Michael Jordan shoes and a gym book bag, and he did it without like breaking a sweat. Others of us, we'll just leave it as others, did break a sweat, okay, but we made it to the top, and I think this is the top picture right here. The clouds just came in at the end. You may not see it, but I actually carried Brian like 2/3 of the way because he, for some reason, the Alaskan mountain didn't really prepare him for Mount Washington. So, but you know, together I was able to pull him up with me. But what I was thinking about Mount Washington, and they can attest to this, every person you meet on the trail are so friendly. So friendly. Everybody's, oh, hi, hey, how's it going? Good. Just, and then there's one cabin you stop. There's one cabin that went in, and everybody's so friendly, so hospitable. Here's coffee, here's this. You know, just this hospitality. And I've hiked before, but I think up there it's just everybody is friends. Like everybody's like even you're a stranger, they care for you. That was my impression. Like everybody you met are just like nice and want to be helpful and maybe because, you know, I don't know what you guys think, but it's just there's no one else there. Like we're in this together, and it could be kind of dangerous. So I don't know, but it's just a different perspective to see. But it's almost like maybe think of this we're talking about like hospitality, like you do not see when you walk the streets. Yeah. Like that type of everybody friendly, hi, want to be helpful. But it's really cool to just get a glimpse of that. Yeah. Like just this man, like it feels good. Everybody's like trying to be helpful. You're not their enemy. Get off the path. Like everybody steps aside and, you know, help. If you're running, step to the side. Just so polite, hospitable, you know. So it was so neat to see. And I thought of, you know, hospitality. If there's any practicals, right? I'm sure there is.
Must be.
What'd you say?
Must be.
There must be. I'm sure there's some practicals. Like say for example, I've been to someone's home and I'm like, whoa, this is nice. I mean, the way they set the table. Like their dining set, just it's well done. You can come to our house, and you know, it is what it is, right? But I've been to homes like this is way nicer. You know, like I'm not saying like, you know, I'm just saying. Some people have it, you know, look at it socioeconomically, right? Some people have it. I've been to this one lunch one time. I'm not saying that our house is bad. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying you go to someone's house and whoa, this is nice, and you feel like kind of like a little king. I went to this one luncheon in Sweden one time, worked in this corporate industry, and there was a lunch with me and this other CEO who works for another investment company in Sweden because we wanted to, my boss thought we can connect and work with inner city kids for soccer. And I went in there, and you go on the floor, you came to the lobby, and like he'll see you soon, and then you walk in. The room was huge, and it was big, just me and him. It's a huge table with the servant. I was like, man, this is not the first time for me. This is business lunch, like this, you know. Super nice. I wasn't hungry. I wish I came hungry. All I'm saying is, there's different levels of being, maybe the etiquette, the culture of hospitality. Like you got it packed down, right? And some people are just maybe learning out, like how to be hospitable, how to do it all, and all that stuff. So yes, maybe there are some practicals, right? Culturally speaking, but I think it's even more important to have the heart to be hospitable. Like I've been to someone's home, and you realize they don't. I went to Nigeria, a family in Nigeria. I remember there's one. We went to see some distant relatives, and compared to if you think you're poor, like if you drove here, if you have an iPhone, if you have a 401k, if you make more than like $2 a day, like that type of poor, yeah. And you walk in there, it's like a basic house, no AC, no running electricity, no running water, and there's like nothing, and they're like, you walk in and you know you can't leave until we feed you. Right. Like you can't. It took an hour and a half. Because you got to make everything from scratch. Wow. And they're sitting there and just like, you have to eat. And like, you eat. And we're from Norway. We're okay. But they're like, no, you have to eat. Like that was a culture. Like you have to eat. We have to feed you. We have to make you some before you leave. And the practicals was not, it wasn't like, whoa, but it was like the heart was amazing. So I think for all of us, yes, I think it's more about the heart. I think people see that. Like when you sincerely just want to be hospitable and loving. I think, this idea of, again, what I mentioned earlier was, I think you're missing out. We're missing out. I think if you're not being hospitable. Because I think there's a gift that God has given us. And this is a story, you may have heard it before. He went to Alaska. So I'm sure you probably heard of it, right? But what's his name? Christopher McCandless. Okay, so long story short, he graduated college, and then he thinks kind of a whole Western capitalist system is evil. And he just wants to live off the grid and not be dependent on anybody, not pay taxes, not be depending on any social services, infrastructure, just be completely free. He writes a letter to his parents, true story, and he starts trekking west from DC, I think, or Maryland. Just hiking, no job, works a little bit of this, restaurant here and hikes further. All the way, he goes to Colorado, he goes down the river, he goes into Mexico. But his goal is to get to Alaska. Then he finally gets back from Mexico through Colorado, hikes, works, meets people, stays a week here, a week there, a month there, makes it to Alaska. He's finally made it to Alaska. The last thing he does, I think he cuts up his credit cards, he leaves money in the cash somewhere, I forget all the details, and just walks into the wilderness in Alaska. And he has a rifle, he has a little bit of rice. There's 3 books, there's a movie about them. Gets into Alaska, he's trying to live off the land, because that's his idea of bliss, of what we were designed to be. Then he realized it's really hard to live off the land. Like it's hard to kill a moose and to cut it up and do what you do to eat a moose or deer, whatever it is. He gets hungry, it's hard to find food, and then he realized that I actually want to go back to my family. He tries to cross his river, and I think it's this time of the year, the river is a little higher, he's weak, he's malnutrition, he can't cross it, he's going to drown. So he goes back to this bus where he makes his home, and basically either dies of malnutrition or food poisoning, we don't really know. So weak, so thin, and he has a little journal, and he writes in the journal what it says right there, that happiness is only real when shared. So it's like almost like that Titanic type story, like when you realize it's too late. But like the happiness that I thought I was looking for, being by myself, like it's actually in community. But it's too late, and he died in that bus. So I think hospitality, people want it. Like happiness is in community. I think hospitality is like that bridge, I guess such a simple, practical bridge to bring that to people. And you guys know little Rosie. So Rosie in many ways is just like the epitome of a bundle of love. I'm biased because it's my daughter. A little bit biased, right? But this last year at school, she learned that sharing is caring. That's the thing they would say at school. Sharing is caring. And she would say it so many times, like when Ben and Lily would kind of, disagree or argue or fuss. Sharing is caring. Sharing is caring. But it's such a simple truth, right? Sharing is caring. And she's really good at sharing. But I think that picture right there of joy, like I want that for me. Like I want to be like that bubbling of sharing, right? And just because it's like it's how God has designed us, like to be loving. Because when you love, you get love, and it's just this bundle of joy. And I think hospitality is like a practical way we can just express that love without really just being hospitable. Like it's so simple. And through that, God can do amazing things. So with that, we'll stand up and sing our last song.